G'day guys, Dakaiju Down Under here. In today's video, we will be talking about this guy right here. This is my custom SH MonsterArts Shin Jirass figure. Let's talk about it. So what is Shin Jirass and why does it exist? If you've seen the Shin Ultraman film, you know at the start of the movie, it pays homage to the original Ultra Q series, and you get Shin Godzilla, which uses the Shin Godzilla files, right? You get Shin Godzilla, it's basically Shin Godzilla, it's an homage to the original Ultraman and Ultra Q series and that whole Subaraya Toho deal and production, various suit borrowing shenanigans that they had there. This here is more or less an extension of that, using a custom figure. So I had a second SH MonsterArts Shin Godzilla, one from the first production run, which wasn't that great. It had some bad paint, it had some bad QC, the joints would fall apart. So I ended up getting a second one from the second production run, and that one was a lot better. I'll bring that figure out shortly to do a comparison with this guy. But anyway, instead of selling off that figure, I figured, let's paint it here. So this first production run figure, I repainted, and I thought, let's repaint it into Shin Jirass, just because it'll be fun. Now, Shin Jirass doesn't actually exist, there is no Shin Jirass in the Shin Ultraman movie, but much like the original Ultraman series, Shin Jirass would be pretty easy to achieve, right? You just take a Godzilla, in this case the one that they used before was Shin Godzilla, so why not Shin Godzilla, chuck a frill on it, chuck some different paint on it, and there you go, a brand new kaiju. So that's Shin Jirass here. So, let's talk about the figure itself. So the base figure is the SH MonsterArts Shin Godzilla, and then of course I've completely repainted it, and I've given Jirass here his signature frill. And I'll talk about how I made that when I do some close-ups. But first I just want to quickly go over that custom process and how I made the general figure itself. So what I did was completely strip the figure, got it down to most of its basic elements, like the tail, like the legs, so on and so forth, painted them completely grey, and then chucked on a very nice dark coat of green. From there, I did some greyish blue dry brushing, which might be a little overhanded, but it does bring out those details. And then I also did some gold highlights, which you can see, like on the belly there, on the thighs, on the knees. And then of course it was the finer details, like the claws, and so on and so forth. So besides that, it was actually a pretty easy paint job to do. It's not the most complex paint scheme around. It was just a lot, because the figure itself is super large, really, there's just so much to paint, right? And then I had two elements that I figured I should put a little bit of extra care into. That was the head and the frill, and of course the tip of the tail here, and I'll cover both of those in just a second. So we'll do some close-ups here. Because this thing is so large and it's hard to fit on frame, I'll do some individual close-ups, and then we'll talk about some more stuff like that. Excellent, sounds good. We'll start with the frill, because that's the most defining characteristic of Jirass, right? How did I make it? Originally, the frill was done with 2-part epoxy. However, it was just way too heavy and it was way too thick and it wouldn't keep its shape. So the first prototype, I guess you could say, for this figure, the 2-part epoxy frill didn't really turn out. However, I did still want to continue using the 2-part epoxy, just so I could sculpt in some details and give it that sort of shape that I wanted. So I needed to come up with a way to strengthen it. What I ended up doing was cutting up newspaper, cutting it into the rough shape of the frill you see here, and then putting a very thin layer of 2-part epoxy over the top. So instead of being all epoxy, basically this thing's just 2 layers together. You've got the front layer of epoxy, you've got the back layer of epoxy there, sandwiched over the newspaper, and that did the trick. It's light enough, it's thin enough, and yet I was still able to do the details. So it holds up the figure's neck very well. I can still articulate that without it being weighed down, and I was able to put on those very fine details. So once I had the general shape of the frill, I created these sort of, maybe not too detailed, not too textured, just sort of lines. I guess they would be the bones where the membranes would attach to. I don't know, they were just a cool flare detail, something that the original figure had, something that Jirass has, sorry. So I decided to add them here. And then the final bit of detailing was just to add some very tiny little random bits of epoxy. Nothing too special, no rhyme or reason, just random little bits here just to help give that frill some texture. And then I painted it up. What I also did to make sure that the membranes themselves were textured, but despite adding these little bits here, was I actually took some latex gloves and just sort of went like that with my fingers and my thumb, right? Just to give it the tiniest little bit of texture so it wasn't just completely flat. So you have that sort of almost skin look there, plus the extra details, and that makes the frill look very good, especially when it's painted. It's not overly detailed, it's not under detailed. It works pretty well and it flows pretty nicely with the rest of the figure. Taking a look at the back of it there, you can probably actually see that almost skin texture detail just a little better there. I'm not sure how well that shows up on camera, but there you go. And then of course I did some dry brushing over the top of that just to make it really stand out on the figure. As you can see, the seam around the neck isn't perfect. However, I'm happy with how it turned out. You're not really going to see this angle of the figure anyway. If I'm doing photography or videos or whatnot with the figure, I'm going to have it displayed like this. You've got Jirass's front, and then there you go. And as you can see, it is just Shin Godzilla with a frill over it, which is pretty accurate to how Jirass was in the original Ultraman series anyway. But while we're here, we'll take a quick look at that paint, mainly on this upper body here. So again, you can see that green sort of paint that I had for the figure there, and then I've just done some gold dry brushing over the top. I can't remember what gold I used, but it definitely was some gold dry brushing. I'm pretty sure it came from a Gundam marker. But that's how I got sort of the gold-ish details in the frill there. And then again, those membranes were just painted up completely gold there. You can see the head here coming in just a little closer. You can see those layers of green there, plus the lighter green sort of dry brushing over the top. And then of course, some gold highlights right on the top of Godzilla's head, or I guess in this case Jirass's head now. The eyes were repainted. I gave them just a little bit of a grayer sort of look for the pupil, plus that little black dot. And then the teeth were also repainted from Shin Godzilla. I didn't actually change the inside of the mouth. The inside of the mouth stayed the exact same from Shin Godzilla. Moving on to that chest, again, as you can see, more of that gold dry brushing done there just to really bring out those membranes. And again, you can see more of that green with the light green on top, even some gold sort of here. And here you can see the original base green that I had, so it was definitely a very foresty dark green before the dry brushing went over the top. I made this figure a while ago, and of course my customizing skills has definitely improved since then. All of this would be painted if I were to redo this figure. Will I redo the figure? Probably not. Looking at those spines quickly here, as you can also see, gold tips there with that sort of light green dry brushing in the top there. Now again, the entire figure was completely repainted, so all of this was originally grey before I gave it that dark foresty green, and then the dry brushing of the light green sort of over the top there, plus the gold. So that turned out pretty well. So that's the top half of Shin Jirass, and you've got the head, you've got the frill. Let's take a look at the tail as well, because that's got another sort of interesting detail on it. And then I might do some final shots and we'll do some size comparisons as well, guys. So taking a look at Shin Godzilla's tail here, just severing that off. You can see again that same dark green with that light green dry brushing over the top. Now again, I made this a while ago, a little inexperienced, and as you can see, I haven't really painted the entire figure here. And of course you've got some paint scraping there, but keeping the tail perfectly straight, which is how I display it, it doesn't look too bad. You can also see that gold right over the top there. But the cool important detail, the tip of Shin Godzilla's tail, right? As you know, the tip of Shin Godzilla's tail, it's all mangled, it's all got bones in it, it's got that signature face in there as well. And I figured, why not do something kind of fun, something cool with that, right? So as you can see, the tail itself, it does still have all of that detail brought out there. Just gave it just a very light tan sort of dry brushing there, just to really highlight those bones. You can see all that green underneath there. But what I decided to do was paint up the bones right at the tip of the tail, as well as that eye socket slash eye. And that was done in an attempt to actually replicate Ultraman's face. I know that sounds weird because it's definitely not sculpted to look like Ultraman's face at all. However, I figured in universe, if Shin Jirass is going to have this thing here, why not do something cool with it, right? So it's Ultraman's face. You can see some more of that just sort of silver detailing there. Stuff like that. So that looks pretty cool. So that adds just a little tiny element to the end of the tail there. and I think that's a cool sort of fun, gimmicky sort of thing that the figure has. So let's do some size comparisons here. I'll bring the figure back, reassemble it, and then we'll do some size comparisons with some of the Shin Ultraman stuff. So just super quickly guys, here you can see how my custom SH MonsterArts Shin Jirass figure stacks up against the other SH Figuarts Shin Ultraman figures. From left to right we have first appearance Shin Ultraman himself, in the middle there is the custom Jirass figure, then on the right there you've got Mephiles and Zoffy. Another figure who's really hard to frame up. Here you can see my custom SH MonsterArts Shin Jirass compared next to the SH Figuarts Shin Zeton figure. And finally, here's your quick comparison between my custom SH MonsterArts Shin Jirass and the SH MonsterArts Shin Godzilla figure here. These two look really cool next to each other. You've got the green, you've got the red. It's almost a little bit of a Christmassy vibe. Anyway, who do you think would win in this fight? My money is personally on Shin Godzilla, but maybe Shin Jirass has some random ability as well. Let me know down in the comment section below. Alrighty guys, that's all I've got for today's video. What do you think of this custom figure here? Let me know down in the comment section below. And just quickly before we sign off, I want to say thank you to each and every single one of you. You guys are continuing to show this channel an absolutely insane amount of support, and it really does mean the world to me. As long as just one of you guys are watching, I'll continue to make these videos. So again, thank you all so very much. I've been Daikaiju Down Under, and I'll catch you all in the next video.